Hi, multifarious fisherman here. This is Seven Fish. We're here in the office. I want to talk to you a little bit about fly lines and the knots used to hold them together. When you are running fly line, you are typically running at least 3 different types of line in your fly reel. I've got this bright orange line in here, that's backing, that's the first stuff that goes in the reel. And it essentially adds length to your fly line, because fly line is pretty short. It's typically 30-ish yards, 90 feet. As such, if you hooked a big fish at the end of a long cast, it could potentially run you out of line. So you use backing to build up the spool diameter to make that fly line be in bigger, looser coils on the reel. Now, that's typically put together with a nail knot to the back of the fly line, and we'll show you how to do that real quick. All right, we got our fly line, we've got our fly line backing. What we're going to do is we're going to use a tool to tie the nail knot. There are a lot of nail knot tools on the market. We're going to use one that is not commercially available, but it is the best nail knot tool that there is. What it is a short loop of monofilament. You can use just cut a short piece of heavier mono off, and that will be your nail knot tool. The reason that this works so good is that it has no thickness. Most of your nail knot tools have some diameter to them so that you can keep a hole open and pass your line through it. This tool will function to pull it under, but when you're wrapping it, you're tight to the fly line with very little additional diameter. So your loops on your knot stay very nice. So I'm going to take this end, and I want to have a decent amount to tie my knot with. So this is my tag end, this is my backing, this is my fly line. You'll notice my tool is shorter than my fly line. I don't want that to sneak through there. So I want to make sure that my fly line stays longer than the length of my tool so that I don't accidentally pass it through. This black piece will represent my fly line. This green piece will represent my piece of monofilament tool material. And this tan piece will represent my backing, and I will pass them by each other. I will wrap that around itself, the tool, and the end of the fly line multiple times, and then I will pass it through the tool. I can pinch my loops. After I pinched them, I'm going to pull a little bit of slack out of that, and then I've got my tool, I've got my tag end through my tool, and I've got both of the other lines out of the way. I'm going to pull on my tool until that loop sneaks out the back side. Once that loop is through, I will pull on the loop to open it up, and that pulls my tag end under all of those wraps. So I had I wrapped up here, put my tag end through the tool, and then use the tool to pull that tag end underneath all those wraps. Now, before I pull this really tight, I'm going to slide the fly line so that so I don't have to cut a bunch of it off. I'm going to slide it up very close. I still want a little sticking out there. And then I'm going to really reap on that. I'm really going to pull that down. And what that's doing is allowing that backing to bite into that fly line casing. Now, I've got a very strong knot. You can cut that right at the knot. I don't need any extra tag hanging out there. I've got enough little bit of fly line sticking out there for it to grab hold of, and I've got a good strong knot. I will not lose a fish to that knot. Now it's just time to wind my fly line into my reel. When I do this, I will use my 2 fingers. I hold the reel with my ring finger and my thumb, and I'm going to use these 2 fingers to guide that backing on there, that fly line on there. So I want it to just be a nice, smooth, not piled up on one side or the other. I just want it to roll on there nice and even. This is almost complete. Then we can add our leader to the end. The next kind of line that's going to go into that on the end of your fly line is, obviously the fly line is too thick. You can't tie a fly onto that. So you need something smaller that'll go through the eye of the fly, plus you want it to be a little less obvious. Problem is, if you just use regular monofilament, when you cast, that fly line has a certain amount of energy it's trying to make that fly go out. And if you use a fine monofilament, so let's say you want to finish your tippet at 5 pound or lighter for trout or for really small flies, which honestly you can't put like 8 pound tests through some of the eyes of some of the very small flies. So if you just tie that monofilament to the end of the fly line, what will happen is it's not stiff enough and it'll act as a hinge point. The end of the fly line will hinge, your fly will land next to your fly line and not out at the end of the cast where you want it. You need thicker, heavier line to help turn that fly over. The stiffness of that butt section of the leader will help turn that fly over. Leader taper typically will be a 7.5 or a 9 foot long tapered leader. And the taper happens in the middle third. So if you think in terms of dividing that into thirds, a third at the butt section of the fly line is thick. The end towards the fly is the thinner. The middle 3 foot section between the 3 foot of fat and the 3 foot of skinny is where it tapers. So as you cut and retie, you put a fly on, you cut and retie, you cut and retie, maybe you snag, break some off. When that leader gets down to 6 foot, you're all of a sudden starting to get into that tapered section and it's not going to behave like you want it to. I use a different knot for tying the leader to the end of the fly line. A lot of fly lines now are coming looped. Most of your leaders that you buy come looped, but I'll teach you that loop knot so that if you buy leaders that don't have loops, or if you have fly line that doesn't have loop, you'll know kind of how to put that together. Because a loop-to-loop connection is so much easier. When you're on the water and you need to change your line, you can change it over very quickly using that loop-to-loop connection. So let's show you that knot as well. The process of looping 2 loops together is very simple. You pass one loop through the other loop, take the end of the first material, that's going to be your leader in this case, pass it through itself, pull that down, and you have a loop-to-loop connection. Very simple to make. On the water, you don't have to tie a knot. Then to untie that, you're just going to push them together, and you've got your old leader off. Put the new one back on, and that simply, you're back in fishing. You'll start the perfection loop by having the butt section of your leader coming straight out of your thumb. You're going to pinch it with your finger at the base of the pad of your thumb. You're going to begin by taking the first loop as though you're wrapping around your thumb. You'll pinch that with your finger underneath. You'll take the second wrap over the top of your thumb, and the third wrap will come over the first loop under the second loop. You're going to pass that second loop through the first loop and pull without pulling on the tag end. That will give you the correct perfection loop. Do not pull the tag end when you tighten that, or it'll reverse something in the knot and it'll become a slip knot, which is no good to you. So that knot that you're going to use to tie the tippet to the end of your leader when you get to that point, there's a couple of different knots that can be used, but I tie a blood knot. Some guys will tie a surgeon. You can use a uni to uni as well. I think it takes up just a tiny bit more line. So the blood is a pretty straightforward knot, and we'll show you how to tie that blood knot. You'll start the blood knot by crossing your tippet and your leader at 90 degrees. Pinch the crossover point. I will pass one line around the other several times, depending on the diameter, probably 4 or 5. Then I will pass that through the crossover point, and notice I'm going away from myself. I'll take the second line, wrap it around the first line the same number of times, and then I will pass that through the same hole at the crossover point that the other went through. Now I went away from myself the first time. This time it needs to come towards myself. They have to be going opposite directions through this. Then as you pull those tight, those barrels will slide up against each other, make a very nice, neat barrel, and you can trim the ends very close to the knot. It'll pass through the guides and be plenty strong. Hey, to be part of the 7 Fish experience, send us a fish photo so you can be part of our intern of the week, be on next week's end screen. Also, like the video, comment if you'd like, or subscribe, and click the bell so you get notified when we post a new one.